Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism. It is my honor to convene this international conversation that takes place every day as we look at various aspects of COVID-19. Our job is not to focus on the news, but to talk around the news and to bring you guests that may not be covered and guests and topics that may not be covered on the news as you are watching it. We've had so many different shows in the last 77 days because this is 70 every since the lockdown happened in New York. I'm in Manhattan on the Upper West Side, and we have people watching from around the world. Please tell us where you're watching from. Please tag us, tag your friends. Please hit share, please retweet, because we're live right now on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. If you're interested in all our archives, you can find them by going to my YouTube channel, by going to youtube.com/Sreenet, SREENET. We hope you'll have a chance to do that. Please hit subscribe. On the last 77 days, we met so many amazing people. Today, you're in for a real treat. One of my dearest friends and one of the nicest people you'll ever meet is joining us here in our show. And that's David Beard. He is known as @DaBeard on Twitter, DABEARD. I try to say it the Chicago way, but not everybody gets it. And I don't think David and I have ever discussed it. But DABEARD on Twitter. Find him on Twitter and follow him right now because you are going to be amazed by what he does on social. He's the executive editor for newsletters of National Geographic. Yes, the National Geographic. He runs 7 newsletters there. Some of them have several 100,000 subscribers. Some have more than 2 million. How does one man do this all with a fabulous team? You're going to hear all about it. And we're going to learn about the power of newsletters because it's something that I am deeply invested in and interested in because I believe that newsletters are magic. I believe that newsletters are more relevant than ever before. I wrote first about newsletters in the New York Times in 1996, and I'll try to pull up that story to show it to you. In 96, I wrote about the power of newsletters. And now here we are, newsletters are more important than they've ever been. And by the way, are you subscribing to my newsletter? I have one that comes out every Sunday. It's called Sunday Note, and you can find that very easily if you go to substack.com, sreenet.substack.com, or just email me, sree@sree.net. I'll add you to my newsletter. We'd love to have you join us on that and see what we're talking about because newsletters have power and have power now especially. Before we get you to David, we want to thank our producers of our show, Vandana Menon @Vandana_Menon, and Rose Horowitz @Rose Horowitz 31. They live tweet, they post, they share, and we hope you will do the same. Please follow them. And please tell us right now where you're watching from. What are you thinking about? How is day 77 treating you? Some places in America are opening up. Some places in the world have already opened up. And some places like New York, things are still closed. And it's going to be a while before they open up. So before we go to David, I want to tell you about one of the opportunities that we are offering you. And that is a free course with our friends at Muckrack Academy. This is a free certification course for fundamentals of social media for journalists, public relations professionals, and anyone. Anyone in any profession can benefit from this. Any age, any experience level, please sign up. A free certification program. The course launches in early June, and my colleague Linda Bernstein and I are working very hard to make it real and available to all of you. More than 3,000 people have already signed up. Please go to mrac.co/social. mrac.co/social. Take out your phone and take a picture of this or take a screenshot of this and send this to everyone you know. They will benefit from this free certification. It's not very long, but you will benefit from it, I promise you. My goal is to give you the best training for basics of social media, and you can sit through it and take quizzes, and you can add a line to your LinkedIn in the middle of this pandemic. So people all over the world are already signed up, and I hope you will too. Now, let's get to David Beard. I'm so excited to bring him on the show. I've been wanting to have him on the show since day one, and here we are at day 77, because I love spending time with David. We have done all kinds of cool projects in all kinds of places, and we are just so lucky that he's going to spend time with us here tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me bring to you David Beard.
Hello, Sree. Thanks very much. Thank you very much for having me on tonight. And I've really enjoyed working with you in places in the U.S. and elsewhere during our times together. And I think that since we've known each other, we've all been doing some of the same. We've learned new things, but the basics are just connecting with the audience in a direct manner, in a more direct manner than media generally did in previous years. So I find that whatever platform we're on, whatever we're doing, we're talking to the audience, we're respecting the audience, we're giving dignity to the audience, and that's what I love.
And you do that better than almost anyone I know, Dave. I'm just so proud of everything you've achieved in your career, and now you have this incredible title at an incredible publication. You're the executive editor for newsletters of National Geographic. Before we go there, and before we talk about that, before we get your tips on how to make better newsletters, how to make better content, how to connect with audiences, how to do storytelling, this is going to be a master course. I know from spending time with you. I want everyone to make sure they're tagging their friends right now on Facebook or retweeting on Twitter or sharing this. And I hope you had a chance, David, to share on your platforms as well, because you have an amazing audience. We want everybody to join us and say hi to David. David is mostly someone people see on their phones in text form. Now you're going to get to hear from the man himself, and I'm so excited about it. So first, let me ask you, how are you doing? How's your family? And how have you come through these 77 or so days?
We're doing great. We're running out of a little imagination on the food menu side, but we're going to try to pick it up a little bit. And we're learning. We're cooking a lot more than we used to, and we're having a lot of talks with different members of our family and different friends. We're having talk walks a lot. And sometimes I'll even pass Gail on sort of a not a very sort of a rural road. She'll be on one side, I'll be on the other, and we've each scheduled a talk with somebody else, and we'll wave to each other. Gail's my wife, yes. And so things are as well as they could be in this time. And I have two sons that are one's very far away and one's not that far away, but still we can't really connect very much because it's distance. And anyway, but those are small things compared to others.
And we certainly want to get to the news of the day also. This is the milestone that passed today of 100,000 deaths in the United States. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the actual news that happened today. The launch of SpaceX was the non-launch. We'll talk about that. There's so much to talk about. We only have an hour. So let's just tell us about this job you have of executive editor newsletters of National Geographic.
Oh, sure. I began as a contractor. It was sort of an idea that I'd been talking with a friend there on their strategy, and they basically National Geographic puts out that monthly magazine. They have a website, and I think they were looking for relevance more, and people to come back more often, and so we had come up with a couple notions, and we settled on. They had sort of weekly newsletters in various topics that were just basically, here's 5 stories that ran that week in this topic that was sort of standard headline and standard, I guess you would call it teaser text or subheads that, but it was almost like mechanically done. And so they wanted people who would look at other things in various categories that may not have been produced by National Geographic, but would be something that would interest National Geographic readers, or would be something in the same topic in between long magazine stories that we would do. So, and something written with some voice, and so I've had fun. I started doing it as a contractor, and then it got more and more involved, and I ended up getting hired full time for this. So that's nice. I've given up some of my other work that I had done, and taken this on, and it's quite challenging because I go through. It began with 5 categories. When you think of National Geographic, it's history, it's travel, it's science, it's wildlife and animals, and then it's on photography, plenty of photography. And so for the 5 days of the week, I do separate newsletters on those 5 topics. And then when the pandemic struck, we felt we needed to do something with our National Geographic kids and our families' efforts to kind of give high quality information to parents who had to sort of homeschool at the same time. And that was a family and kids thing. And what you're showing right now is the other post-pandemic newsletter. It'll be out tomorrow night. It's called, every Thursday night, it's called Your Weekly Escape. And this may be coronavirus news in a way that just hits discovery, exploration, some distraction, but it might sort of cleanse your mind. It's not sort of Pollyanna-ish, but it is something that's different from the day-to-day drill of what we're dealing with this pandemic. So that's also very popular with readers and akin to some other projects I had done previous to Nat Geo.
Let's just say a couple of things. One is look at this picture. So the power of photography inside newsletters. Like people may think newsletters are more old school, a lot of text, but pictures are here. And National Geographic, we should say, has been a pioneer in digital for many, many years, a couple of decades now, because I remember being a judge at the National Magazine Awards in the digital category, and Nat Geo might have been the very first or the second winner because they've been trying things for a long time. And later on, I'll ask you about how do you take a brand like that and make it so nimble in the digital age when there are other counterparts of theirs that haven't been as nimble. We obviously see the New York Times, Washington Post, Nat Geo as prime examples of traditional organizations that are now nimble. LA Times is another example, but we'll also get from you, what can people learn who don't have the big budgets of a Nat Geo, the big opportunities that come with having large staff. So we'll pull those ideas out as well. Let's look at a couple of other things that you wanted us to see here. We're just going to go in and look at an interesting headline I thought here on this newsletter. Tell us about today's big question.
Yes, well, we basically set it up with, so you know, topically, each of we have the 5 daily newsletters have a small essay that's written by the sort of content chief of history. That would be Deborah Adams Simmons in this case, and she and I would work on a topic, and it might be connected to a story that we've written, and this actually predated, if you listen to the New York Times podcast, The Daily, this was actually the exact topic of today, Wednesday's podcast, but it was our topic on Monday. But it also is, here's an organization that is beloved by 91% of Republicans and 91% of Democrats in America, that saved the savings of millions of people during the Great Depression when thousands of banks fell under, and people who trusted in banks were ruined. People who trusted in something called post office banking were saved. And and that post office savings helped provide money for bonds for World War II and other things too. So the post office is sort of a miracle in this country, and it's interesting that the games that are being played with it. So
can I just explain to our audience, Dave, that we have such an international audience.
Oh, sure.
We just want to tell them that the story here is that the president sees mail-in ballots as an opportunity for fraud, but basically as an opportunity to create havoc in the electoral system. We're not being political here. We're just saying, as he himself has declared, there are thousands of people he think are committing fraud. And so he's gone after the postal system in the middle of this pandemic. And in fact, that famous Twitter label that there is problems with the mail-in ballot, that has all come from this particular story. So we want to make sure people do that.
Right.
I also wanted to pause
and for international readers, it also, there is an animus between the president and the owner of the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, who runs Amazon and does a great deal of business through the U.S. Postal Service, enabling a small profit from the Postal Service for that sort of work. But the president would like to double or triple the cost of each package that Amazon would have to do in there, basically to hurt Amazon and Jeff Bezos, who also is a publisher of the Washington Post, one of the more critical newspapers of the Trump administration. So
not everybody
there are little and big things behind this attempt to perhaps scuttle a 245-year-old tradition in America.
Yeah, and that's really, really sad. Let me just do one of the things we do on the show, David, is we call it our global tour. We show you where people are watching from. So as I bring these people to you, or their cities or their countries, if you have any either memories, or you've done a story, or you've been there, or you like their food, or you've even heard of them, you can say hi. Anand's watching from Andhra Pradesh in India. Jeevan's also in India. Jonathan Borstein is watching from Union Square. So tell us about New York and your interests in New York.
Oh yeah, well, I'd like to go back to India if I could. On Friday, we're going to have we have a photographer who covered the cyclone that really devastated Kolkata and West Bengal and parts of Bangladesh, hardly known in the U.S. for this, what this cyclone has done. And one of our photographers took this beautiful photo of sort of hope amid devastation, and a famous painter did a painting of this photograph too. So in Friday's newsletter, we're going to both portray the photograph and then the painting that that was done of that photograph too, and it allows for us to explain to our readers the 86 people were killed, tens of thousands of homes were flattened, and a lot of Kolkata was flooded, and big parts of it were wrecked.
And thank you for covering that.
You won't see a lot in other places in American news things, but National Geographic is world focused as well.
No, that's amazing. Anything you want to say about Union Square?
Oh yeah, just to kind of, I wish I were walking around Union Square right now. I love it. I love that area.
Stefan says, so happy that our dear friend David Beard, one of the best in the business, is with us tonight. I miss my man. Hugs, Dave. And he says,
likewise,
Dave newsletters are epic and some of the best. Mark says, so great to see you both. Olinda is watching from Mumbai. She says, hello. Oh. She's making fun of my greeting. Roberta is watching from Richmond, Virginia. You two need to connect, because she runs the comms for the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and they have so many great stories that you will want to know about, and some of them may make perfect sense for your newsletter. And she's in Richmond, and she's a dear friend of mine for almost 30 years. She was very, very young when she started. Rose Horowitz is here. So happy to see you. Thank you for joining us. Rose is one of our producers, as you know, Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana _Menon. They've been with me for 77 days, Dave. That is a very difficult thing for people to do, and they've done it. Steve DeReeve is here. He's Steve Taylor, somebody on our team also who does amazing production work. and people hire our team to create shows like this, and also to make virtual conferences out of in-person conferences. So we're doing a conference for 50,000 teachers this Saturday, 5-hour conference, 50,000 teachers, and we'll send you some information on that, of course. And Stefan says, Nat Geo could not have had anyone better than Dave, the best hire ever. That's very nice. Roberta is tagging people. Check it out, about newsletters from one of the best in the business. And people are tagging their friends. Everybody do this. You have a friend who's interested in content, who's interested in doing better social media, who's interested in learning how to operate in this new world of content. You've got to learn from Dave Beard. So please connect. And good news, Dave, for the good news, for the category of some good news. Aparna Mukherjee is watching from LA. Anything you want to say about LA, Dave?
Well, only my son and my granddaughter are there, and I root for the LA County, and I think about LA all the time. And sometimes when I'm sleeping, I'm thinking about LA and hoping things are good for all the people there.
Great.
I wonder what it's like right now, catching the breeze, over the bluffs of Santa Monica and the Pacific in the last hour or two of the day. So anyway, thanks, Aparna.
And you and I had some great breakfasts in LA and some great meals. We've worked in so many places, including Dubai and New York and Washington and Boston and LA. And it's so sad what's happening in so many places at the same time. And this is when you miss those places that you took for granted. You and I commuted, traveled. You'd go out to see your grandkids, right? We've been in San Francisco together, Dave. It's things we take for granted. It's so sad. Roberta is continuing to tag people, and her friends are saying thank you. And so please continue to tag folks. Aparna says, Taylor Lorenz's piece about the rise of good news, including Dave, your weekly escape. So that's all in the New York Times, which is awesome. And Roberta wants to know, what newsletter platform do you use, Dave?
We use, there's two platforms. I'll write on a platform called Taxi, we also transfer to another platform called Harmony, which allows us to kind of really work on the audiences that we want to send them to. It's people from Nat Geo have want newsletters, have agreed to sort of a blanket newsletter, and a lot of times they go, if they choose to read a lot of news on science, they may find out they've got the newsletter coming in as well because they've given permission. So there's a lot of mixing different kinds of audiences, a lot more algorithmically than I have used before in newsletters, where I just hoped for the loyalty of people who would sign up and hope to keep those people who sign up. And I've been humbled because some of the people who sign up to a lot of things, but don't often click because they've signed up for so much. Whereas some people who are come here algorithmically turn out to be the best readers of the newsletters. So I feel like I'm a little humbled, wanting to do it the old school way, but yet the data miners have superior knowledge sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Dave, as you can see, I'm putting these banners across the bottom. Do you mind sitting back just a touch so it doesn't go into your there you go. And maybe pull down the laptop just a smidge. Just pull the angle the screen towards you. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great.
We're showing how the sausage is made here. Johnson says, I think the UN and other countries should pass a bill to protect and isolate wildlife in forest ecosystem as they protect and spend money on national borders. This is also, I think, a reference to you working at National Geographic, which has done amazing wildlife work for 100 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do so much between the National Geographic partners, where I works on the publications and the National Geographic channel. And then there's another part, there's two buildings, and the other building houses the National Geographic Society, which funds explorers and all sorts of missions throughout the world. I was doing a story on emperor penguins today, and somebody said, well, aren't you going to include the other story we did on emperor penguins? And I'm like, Oh, right. So there's a lot around the building and a lot that we've done. So I really I'm humbled at just how much is going on there and how much I'm learning. And there are different partners that 73% of the National Geographic partners it's for profit and it's owned by Disney. The other 27% is owned by the National Geographic Society. And so with Disney, we are able to sort of find different partners. People from ESPN who might be covering sports normally but aren't now might be doing work for us on a meatpacking town in Nebraska that's also crazy about football. So we're able to use resources from ESPN, or today for the scheduled launch, we had partnered on a live cast with ABC News. So that was on in real time too. So we've got those kind of resources as well.
Thank you. Let's keep going. Kavita is watching from New York. And let's see who else is here. Joe is watching from outside of Atlanta. And Joe is a good friend. He's been watching the show from the very beginning. I'm very grateful to him for his Filled with Story ideas. And he says, I hope you are well. You and your guests have been a beacon of light. Thank you so much, Joe. Joe has also said things as others have, that this is uplifting. Someone called it a life, a kind of lifeline. And I say, this is my lifeline, Dave. For 77 days doing this has been so special for me personally. Ashok is watching from Kerala in India. And people, and he's inviting you to Kerala. Look at that. You're getting an invitation, Dave, to go there. And
I'd love to go, but only in the Sreenivasan style. I'd have to tag along with you, and you could say, "Hey, I grew up here," or "This is where my dad, grew up," or something like that.
Sure.
That would be great.
That'd be great. And Olinda is inviting you to Mumbai, so this is great. Ashok wants links to the newsletter. So why don't we do this? I'll do a little housekeeping. You could just go into the Facebook group and maybe post a couple of the links in there, or or you'll do some of that later. Maybe
I'll do that later. Yeah.
You'll go into the Facebook and drop in some links. So that'll be good. But is there like a nationalgeographic.com/newsletters link?
There is. That's exactly right. natgeo.com/newsletters. And if you click daily, you'd get the 5, which would be Monday history, Tuesday travel, Wednesday science, Thursday wildlife, and Friday photography. And if you want the weekly escape, that's there too. And I haven't even talked really, kids and families, super important for us, and trying to give, like you do for 77 days, trying to give guidance and light and hope to parents who just want to be good parents during this very challenging time. So we hope to offer lots of resources. It's really more of a service project to get the best, to help your kids make it through this period. So it's nice that I have the opportunity to really work on at a place that has a real mission to help educate, to discover, to explore, and to give people just the facts.
And if we're looking just at your front page, where would we find some of your work?
Well, a lot of this, we grab a lot of the material that's on the front page. If you just hit, you might be able to just search newsletters, and you would basically be able to sign up there. Let's see.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Here you
go. Sign up there, and then that will. You have an option of, well, I love photography on Friday. It's kind of like art for art's sake. Imagine I held in my hands these photographs from 110, 112 years ago that the Imperial Russian Geographic Society sent National Geographic. And at that point, they had a magazine to come out, and they had 12 pages they didn't know what to do with. And they slapped 12 photos from Tibet, hidden Tibet, onto this magazine. It was the first photojournalism spread, and it sold so much that it changed the course. Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the telephone, was a key chairman of early National Geographic and loved newfangled things. And that really set the course for its photo-driven future. Really, it's sort of like how it's a key plank in how photojournalism developed. So I feel happy to be at a place when I was in Washington, just to, like with white gloves, touch these photographs, the original photographs from Lhasa. It was just thrilling.
That's amazing. It's like working at a museum, because part of it is a museum, right? An internal museum, and then there's some external stuff as well. Here it is. Go to this page, nationalgeographic.com/newsletters. Enter your email address. Can you walk us through these, please?
Yeah, and you can just select, like, you can either hit checkmark today at National Geographic, or don't checkmark that and go down here and say, you know what, I like history, I like science, maybe I don't like travel so much right now. So you could just choose whatever you wanted. I like animals, I like photography. So you would get each one of these as once a week. So you can choose how much or how little you'd like, and also just unsubscribe at any time. But my goal is to be a genial and sort of open-minded host for you on each of these newsletters, where you might learn something new, or you might, I might curate something that would be a very interesting, something that just opens your mind in a different way, and something that might be a quality experience in a world where so much of your media consumption is one side yelling things at the other side.
Wow, look at all these things and the great photos. And so you're able to bring this.
I am in clover with these photos, and just learning the photographers. Before the pandemic, we had a week where they brought the world's best photographers in for a week on storytelling. And then we were able to, what are your projects for the next 6 months or 12 months? And there was a whole day where they presented like 3 or 4 minutes at a time. And then there was a party that I left a little early, about 2:30 in the morning. But I learned more at this party from about 7 to 2:30 in the morning than I would have in about a month in an office someplace, from each of these like incredibly interesting photographers around the world.
Sure. Ashok is again extending an invitation, and Aparna, who's Bengali, says, or Bengali American, says, the newsletter pick and painting from West Bengal feels especially meaningful to me. Debbie says, I like the clean, easy to read design. Is this an original template? What platform do you use to publish? So I know you answered that already, but let's do it again.
Yeah. I'm working through templates that we did construct for the daily newsletter, something a little different than what you're seeing right now, but it's this is super clean, and we operate it through a system called Taxi, and then once I place it into that system, marketing will come in and produce it in another system called Harmony that allows them to access all sorts of audience sensing material. I feel like I'm trying to describe the smoke and mirrors behind the curtain there, but I really don't know. I'm just learning the scope of what's done with that, and the audience is from all over the world. I can ask a question like, "Of what are you growing your own food?" and I'll get answers from South Africa and Australia and Papua New Guinea and Lebanon, in Armenia. It's amazing. Much of the business of National Geographic is overseas. A majority of it, actually. So I am living in a world that of which a subset is the U.S. audience.
So look at this photograph. I mean, you've gotten to talk to so many photographers. What is it like to work with people who produce magic like this? We're looking at a photo of Riyadh, I believe. Mm-hmm. And what is it like to deal with these amazing photographers and what they're able to do? Look at these. This is a world from above, this is called. Look at this.
Well, I want to meet them where they are. I want to kind of learn about them and how they ended up spending time in Saudi Arabia, or how they work within different systems that they live in around the world. And so I feel like I learn about the person, and then I learn about the person's passions, and then I try to get the passions of those people squeezed into my newsletter in some way. And I should say, Esla Attar, and who's going to the New York Times, and now Gen C, TSE, helped me with a lot of they do a lot of the photo work and procuring and licensing and other things. I couldn't do it by myself. This is so visually driven that I need a full partner on that end.
So look at this picture.
This is from a series of photos taken from the air, and it's just some of these projects people work on for 1 year, 2 years. This is Sudan, I think, or South Sudan, and just it's really some projects that National Geographic has worked on have lasted as long as 10 or even 20 years. Between going back to the same topic again. So it's really wonderful to see the dedication of the people. And among the people is Paul Salopek, who has spent much of the last decade walking throughout the world, from the biblical Eden, through where civilization began, whether it's the Rift Valley in Africa to the sort of the Indian-Bangladeshi border, and he was hiking in Myanmar when the pandemic hit right now. But he hopes to hike all the way down to Tierra del Fuego in the next few years on this project that's already lasted much of a decade.
Yeah, and here we're people watching from various places. Here's Debbie watching from Michigan. And Roberta says she's going to connect with you. And
I would love that.
Johnson's watching from Chennai in India.
Hey,
and
I've been there.
And look at Roberta. She's just tagging people, expert in comms. That's wonderful. Terry Ann Thompson is watching from Las Vegas, where it's 107 degrees. What is your favorite Las Vegas memory or story that you can share?
You know what? Here's a weird story. I don't think I've ever been to Las Vegas. I haven't. How could that happen? How could I not be at CES? How could I not spend a little time on? I have a friend who was a professor and even had a midterm at a casino with the students as they toured the country. But no, I may be not the biggest gambler in the world, so it hasn't been much of an attraction.
But as you know, it's now Vegas is much more than the casino.
Oh, I know.
And all of that. So we got to get you there. I'm sure you'll get an invitation. Our partner says California dreaming seems appropriate, and it's lovely despite the minor heat wave that's going on there. Olinda says National Geographic, a favorite magazine of mine from childhood. So happy to see David. And here's Rose tagging people, and Kavita says it's one of her favorite channels. Amazing shows, and as you were saying, it's a little complicated about all of this. So I must say, part of the reason that there's such vitality at National Geographic is because of the success of the channel, and I think that the channel was a real reason why Disney decided to invest in National Geographic. It was it's a profit driver, and with the streaming service Disney Plus, it's one of the 5 things on the nav bar at the very top for Disney Plus, offering really high quality family scientific and exploration and other videos. So I think it's been a really good marriage that way. Yeah, and that's a pretty powerful. I bet one of the other ones is like Marvel or Star Wars or something.
It is. Like that. Yeah.
That's pretty good company. And Johnson says, I promised good news as one of the things we were going to cover today. So he's a little confused. So let's talk a little bit about good news after we do a couple of more places. Renu says it's 100 degrees from the Central Valley of California. Nat Geo was my first magazine reading material way before I got highlights.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, you're Renu, you're gallant and not goofus to me. That's highlights language for the two people that would sort of stand in moral lessons. For pop culture, it would be kind of like the devil on one shoulder and the angel on another of John Belushi in the movie Animal House. So that's highlights magazine. But I'm glad that people liked Nat Geo. I too. I basically just loved the maps and put all the maps up on my wall when I was a kid. And,
yeah, I think a lot of us did. E.B. Moss interviewed me, and she says her episode is available as a sneak peek on YouTube, and it's out tomorrow at 7 a.m. And that was really interesting for me, David, to think about journalism, how much it's evolved, right? From writing to audio to video, and now live versus podcast. And podcasts have a lot of post-production, whereas these shows that I'm doing have production, but they're all live. And then there's no homework really unless you're doing marketing or promotion afterwards. So it's very different. How much marketing do you have to do to get your newsletters out there? You're already such a big audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's I haven't done the kind of marketing that I've done at other places right now. There's a great marketing team, and they're one or two steps ahead of some of the things that I would have thought would be great to work at. So I am thinking about the product differently, Sree. I'm thinking about it as what makes certain places great, like what makes the Daily pop, or what makes NPR music, for the Tiny Desk concert pop. Music and audio is central to NPR. The Daily is about the spirit of journalism, about finding the story and capturing the story, almost like the excitement of being there. And for me, I want to make sure that these little newsletters reflect the excitement of capturing these worlds, whether it's microscopic worlds from science to outer space that National Geographic covers, and human stories as well. So between the archives and what we're doing now and what's happening in the world, I just have to make sure I've got plenty of cards. I just want to shuffle them the right way and transition each way, so that each day, like each of Sree's live casts, is a really, really big show, is distinctive, and has some pop. So that's what I think about. How can I make it better?
Thank you. That's amazing. We have a viewer from Mexico. Tepoztlan, I think is the pronunciation.
Tepoztlan. It's north of Cuernavaca, between Cuernavaca and Mexico City. I've been there and hiked up. There's a little pyramid at the top of a mountain there too.
Yeah, and Susanna's an amazing journalist, and she lives in Mexico. Talk a little bit about your own work in Latin America. You have a connection to Latin America that many people may not know.
Right. Well, first off, I grew up near the Canadian border in Erie, Pennsylvania, in a very cold place. And people from Buffalo say, "Oh, Erie gets a lot of snow." So I wanted to get warm after I at some point. And I also I was in NRTC and was in Spain catching a ship across to Norfolk one summer, and realized that 4 years of Spanish in high school during the dazed and confused part of American education wasn't really learning the language. So I wanted to get serious about Spanish, and lived with a Mexican family a lot of my senior year in college, and wanted to tell new stories of the great migration northward of Mexicans into the United States the last quarter of the 20th century. And so I spent a lot of time in U.S. cities, and then later with AP in Mexico and the Caribbean basin, and in Argentina, reporting about from Latin America, and then in Miami, kind of reporting Latin America into the U.S. So I just wanted to get the future of America down in my own head, and represent stories that weren't being told by others very well. So that was a good part of my earlier career, and then I ended up as a foreign editor and a regular editor.
And you also continue to how's your Spanish these days?
Oh, it's pretty good. Yeah, yeah. In fact, my granddaughter is half Guatemalan and Mexican. So
Nice.
so we're going to be eating pozoles with the extended family a lot around Christmas time and watching Coco and crying.
Yeah. Terry says plenty of wildlife here in my backyard, where earlier today I found a giant desert centipede. She's in Las Vegas. Olinda says, any comment on the locust attack in northern India? Understand they originate from Iran, Pakistan, and severe, deadly, destructive impact on agriculture. I don't know if you followed this.
Yeah, we basically, I had followed more the Kenya, Somalia, Horn of Africa, almost biblical locust attack there, but I'm going to go check on northern India tomorrow too, because it's 2020. If anything go wrong this year, it seems to be going wrong. Even if, let's say you're able to finally get away from people and walk in the woods, be careful, because ticks are really out this year. You have to make sure you don't, in avoiding COVID, that you don't end up with Lyme disease or something worse.
Wow, that's pretty scary.
2020. Yeah.
My father's watching from Kerala. Hi, Acha, I love you.
Whoa, that's so great.
Yeah.
See, when we go to Kerala.
Yes, you got to go there and visit with him and my mom. They'd love to host you. I know you'll have a great time. Kavita is tagging her friends, and Pavan says, excellent show, thank you. And he's watching on LinkedIn. For everybody who's just joining us, this is the great David Beard, a friend for a couple of decades. He's also the executive editor of newsletters for National Geographic. He runs 7 newsletters that have hundreds of thousands to millions of readers. That's immense pressure, but you're seeing how cool and relaxed he is. He's just a nice guy on top of it. And we're just really honored that he'd spend time with us like this as he's talking. And my mom's also watching. Hi.
Hi.
Great. And yeah. Roberta signed up for all the newsletters. And
that's so great. Well, I want to tell you guys, when we're under lockdown, there was one night where I had this this what we call CTA, call to action, a question like, how are you getting through this lockdown or something else? And within about 3 hours, I had probably about 120 or 130 responses, some of which were quite good. And somebody said, why'd you do that? And I go, well, I'm under lockdown. What else am I going to do tonight? I've just made 120 new friends from all over the world. That's, I don't think of it as pressure because of the audience. I think of it as an opportunity to sort of engage an audience that is really looking for somebody who gets it. And just that's, I don't know how many years I'll be doing what I'm doing, but I love the chance to kind of connect with so many people right now and in this kind of a forum.
And look at these.
Yeah, these are more of those photos from above that are just incredible.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll circle around here and look at more pictures as we're talking here as well. I'm just so taken with this particular photograph because it's so striking to me that they're doing this. I also want to commend you that in your newsletter page, you have a C sample before you sign up. Too many newsletter pages don't have a sample and they just expect you to take it on faith. I think the ability to see a sample before you sign up is very important. And Dave, in a few minutes, I'll also ask you for your suggestions for newsletters to read. Yours, of course, are great, but what are the other ones you will recommend? And also, I'll also ask you for some of your social media tips because they're fantastic. How you do it. Our friend Linda Bernstein says hello. You're the best, David. Your work is inspiring, she says. I love
Linda is inspiring.
Yeah, she says. And I subscribe to many of your newsletters, as do my family members. Little smiley face on there. And Stefan says, I used to get the same feeling and wonder as Dave when I used to search for some photos and find them in the New York Times morgue during my years as a photo editor at the New York Times.
Can I answer that for 1 second? I'm sorry. Hi, Roberta. We every Friday for our photo newsletter, we have something called the Last Glimpse, which is the last photo. And I turn over the newsletter to our senior photo archivist at the archive of the National Geographic. And Sarah Manco is just amazing. You would love her, Sree. Is just so full of life and so full of care for a century or more of images that are through here, and letting her say, no, just pick what you think is interesting and just tell me why you think it's interesting, and I'll put it down in the newsletter. And we're having a lot of fun. I don't know if you've got, oh yes, this is the photographic newsletter, isn't it? Is it photos? If you keep going down, yes, keep going down. Oh, this is history.
I don't know how you keep track of them all, David. You're like having 7 kids, and they're all your favorites, right?
The rise of New France is key to something on the Nat Geo channel that just began Monday night called Darkskins, which is kind of like about how women in France who were poor became sort of mail order brides in a new world and had this level of independence and really have been the backbone of even modern day Canada today. I'm able to quote people like Lorraine Hansberry, who wrote A Raisin in the Sun, and we're able to find inspiration by topic to different places. But anyway, what I was going to say, on the Friday newsletter, at the very end, it's sort of the archivist's some new insight that I learned from Sarah each week too. So there are a lot of resources around National Geographic that I'm just discovering with, I hope, fresh eyes.
And there's so many newsletters that it's hard to even keep track of them all, I'm sure. And so I can't ask you which one's your favorite, because that's like trying to pick your favorite kid. But which one do you have? Do you like? What are some of the stories you remember, or some of these family ones? You must love doing those, right?
Yeah, well, I love just the helping. Some of these things are sort of stretches for me, but I've really enjoyed family and working with the Nat Geo Kids team. So that's sort of a co-production with Rachel Buchholz, who runs Nat Geo Kids, and I've really gotten to know her. Your Weekly Escape is sort of a co-production with my colleague Janie Adams, who sort of runs a lot of the of our work at Nat Geo on other platforms such as Apple News or Pocket or Smart News or MSN. So this is sort of a very functional thing that runs on Tuesday, where it's, if you have 15 minutes, if you have 30 minutes, here's some ideas. On Sundays, I have a broader thing that is more philosophical and more different kind of inspiring things from other parents. So that's interesting. I must say I love photography and learning about how different lenses, and trying to sort of challenge sort of a dominant gaze in photography and find new voices and new ways of telling stories. So I love photography. I love history. My sister is a science teacher, so I was sort of a scientist who threw with my left hand in verbal as a journalist, and then when digital came, I intuitively understood all sort of metric stuff from, I guess, calculus and physics and my engineering stuff in college and programming, Wang supercomputer when I was a kid. But and wildlife, I guess I'm led by the dedication of the staffers in each of these areas too, and you can just be hanging around or talking to somebody at Nat Geo, and they'll say, somebody you wouldn't expect would say, "Oh yeah, I used to go scuba diving with Jose, the archaeologist in Yucatan. We would go down like 200 feet sometimes into a cave and then do some diving." And I'm like, what? You know, it's so I'm sort of reporting on the stories behind the stories, overheard at Nat Geo sometimes. So that's fun as well.
That's great. We have a question from Roberta. How did you do this monkey animation?
Yeah, well, it wasn't me. It was we have an incredible mapping and graphics team, and all I knew was that I was able to take it and reduce it into a GIF and it was small enough that I was able to reproduce it on my newsletter platform. So, but it's part of a bigger story here. See how animals move that has a number of these, so that we can better understand, rather than a still photograph or even a video, because it's slowed down, how the muscles on different animals work for locomotion. It's really thrilling. I don't want to sound like a cheerleader or anything, but friends of mine say it's helped me, because for 40 or 45 hours a week, I'm not thinking about necessarily the national or world political situation as I uncover, I don't know, a new species.
That's great. Anand says, "My God, amazing photographs." Kavita was talking about the photo views earlier. Says they're clear. What a fascinating place to work. David says, "Rose, and they are so fortunate to have hired you. That's so great." Olinda says, "May not be a relevant question here, but National Geographic select iconic, amazing photographs." It
does, and actually, a friend of ours, Sree, Joshua Benton from Neiman Labs, once suggested, with all these Zoom calls, shouldn't local newspapers and other outlets put some of their photographs as Zoom backgrounds?
Yeah.
So you can go to Nat Geo and find photos you can download for Zoom backgrounds now too. So,
oh wow,
so that's something that I had asked about, and Kristen Romy, who's is sort of a history writer and editor, and the organization moved and provided it. So that's nice. But we also have a place where you can get the photographs, get them blown up. There's even a art division that, if you're in Miami or other places, there are some almost like museum shops of National Geographic photographs too.
Nice. Kavita says, "Go to Vegas. Whatever happens there stays there." So
that's probably a good tip. Once we get out of this pandemic, I bet half of the nation is going to go to Vegas.
Twyla says, "Chase, her dog, and her are on the Upper West Side. Dave looking great, and as always with sharp and smart content, which is great." Rose says, "My father subscribed most of his life to National Geographic magazine for the family. My parents traveled all over the world." And Twyla says, "Nat Geo was the world to those of us from small towns." And you're from a small town, and you got to travel the world. So many comments here. We're not going to get to all of them. Vandana says, "My parents have a stack of old Nat Geo magazines at home, all carefully preserved in pristine condition. I remember being told off for leaving thumbprints as a child."
Yeah, well, you find different stuff in history, like the former emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, was a huge National Geographic fan, and he also didn't like thumbprints on his copies.
Renu says, "My parents left issues all over the place, next to chairs, side tables, next to the bed, with the intent that we kids would pick them up and browse. They thankfully were understanding when I cut up pages to paste pictures for a school report." And that was a few years ago. Now we still subscribe to print publications at our house, including 2 daily newspapers, hoping the kids pick them up sometimes, and they do, which is amazing. Ashok says, "Hello from Mumbai." And Roberta says, "I would love to hear Dave's ideas about best practices for weekly nonprofit newsletters." So let's go into
I can do that too. Let's to the utilitarian front.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I worked in nonprofit, not very much of my career, but I worked for public radio, and also have done work with the Center for Public Integrity. And I think that your weekly newsletter, or however even if you're running a library, it's why are you different from everybody else that's producing something, and what is most valued by what you have that's produced, what area could you make a contribution to, and or what audience is it that you're hoping to attract, and is it realistic to do that, and what are the people who love you the most love about what you do? If you ask that sort of range of questions, it might become obvious as to what your biggest fans like most, what you hope that people like most. What for libraries right now, it's how step by step can I get people into our online catalog, or get them onto a free movie canopy or overdrive for audio? How can I get them into different places that they weren't discovering before, so we can stay relevant? So we can stay relevant is probably the key phrase. Even with what I'm doing now at Nat Geo, why do this daily or why do this weekly? So we can stay a part of the conversation. So it's not just grandparents or parents who bought a yellow bordered magazine, once a month when that was the only way that came down. It's how can we stay relevant now? And so for a nonprofit, who are you trying to stay relevant? And maybe that your strategy is simply to, it could be almost mercenary. It could also be like, where do we get our donors from and what are they interested in? And maybe we have a very select newsletter that's based on a very small percentage of people who could fund our operation better, or maybe it's more of a broader based egalitarian approach at a general, small donor pool that you want to get interested and engaged and touching and what you do and caring about what you do with greater frequency. So I don't think I've given you any concrete like do this, but here are the questions to ask. And if you get these questions together, you'll figure out what you do that's different from what everybody else does. And how can you, what's the tone of your organization? Who are the people that you're seeking to bring aboard? Whether it's just to engage, to show up at your activities, or to donate.
Those are great tips. And I think anybody who does that exercise, Dave, will really benefit. Now, let me show you my love affair with newsletters. I wrote about this in the New York Times on July 7th, 1997, an article about newsletters find haven online. I don't think I've ever sent you this, but you're like such a newsletter guru. You should see the story. And so we are talking about some gentleman named David Foster is president of the Newsletter Publishers Association and president of a New York-based newsletter company. The group estimates 40% of a newsletter companies operate on the web. Today, of course, it's a very different number. All of it may be, but just so interesting how newsletters, and how did you come to newsletters as a way of publication? And they're not new, as you can see. They've been around for 25 years online.
Yeah, my little sister would say that when they canceled the school paper in high school, I basically collected stuff from different people in high school, wrote it on my manual Royal typewriter, got a $25 ad from someplace in the mall that sold Levi jeans, and then ran 4 pages off every week for high school that I was, in essence, creating a newsletter. It was like the the stuff I would see in doctor's office from then U.S. News and World Report that would have like all caps, bold face for a subhead for an item, and then snappy sentence or two, and then it would be the other next item. So I guess I'd been doing it all my life. I used to run a website called Boston.com, and I hadn't really focused much on email there. But when I moved to the Atlantic Media Company, the owner, David Bradley, was quite fond of newsletters, and I had to really do nuts and bolts on newsletters while I was there. Went to the Washington Post, and what I learned about events and newsletters from the Atlantic, I was able to apply at the Washington Post, and we were really able to expand newsletters there. So I learned a lot. I really, in terms of writing daily newsletters, I did it temporarily for about 11 months for Pointer. They have a daily media site that was made famous by a writer named Jim Romanesco, setting the business. And I took it over on a temporary basis that lasted nearly a year. And I had to produce something every day for 11 months. And I couldn't make errors, and I had to double check. And just the work of it, I think if I hadn't done that work, I probably wouldn't be able to do the work that I do now at National Geographic. So I learned that it was hard work, but I learned that I could get through it, and techniques to sort of plan for lower items 4 or 5 days in advance and just fill out the top stuff when needed, or bounce it for something that's more exciting, but keep what you have for the week to come. So I feel like sort of the ragman of journalism in this Rococo age. So I never sort of waste anything. If I'm not going to use it this week, I might keep it for next week as an item.
And that's an important point, that not everything has to be breaking news to be interesting, to be used again. You can also recycle some items if you have different headlines. You can do that. I don't want to let you go without talking about your amazing Twitter feed. So as people can see right on the screen, 1,000 people who follow me also follow David, because he's that good. That's how much our world.
No, 1,000 of my followers follow you because you're that good. Anyway.
But look at this. So you say writer, editor, newsletterer at National Geographic. You helped run the Washington Post, AP, Boston Globe, and you give out your email address to the world. That is a beautiful thing to do, and love uplifting stories. How did you know that being in, even as we talk about the horrifying news every day on the front page, that there is room for uplift, there's room for good news, there's room for recharge, which is also a term that you made popular in social?
Yeah, I think probably about 7 years ago, I started something called The Optimist for the Washington Post. My kids and I were on vacation in Oregon. There had been terrible news in Ukraine and in Gaza and in Ferguson, Missouri at that time. And my sons were climbing these pristine hills, and they're saying, I hope Wesley Lowry, a friend, was okay there in Ferguson. And I'm like, we can't get rid of this tough news even on vacation. So I started thinking, is there a way we can give people a breath of fresh air so that they could steel up for the tough news of the week to come, but maybe know that sometimes people do succeed. Sometimes justice does prevail. And so I began that at the Optimist, and did a version of it for Mother Jones for 2 years actually, called Recharge. And so yeah, I do want to get the people with success, or even a great person. This guy here loved classic rock, loved his wife. 27 years they were married on the day that he died, because he went to an Amazon warehouse. And there's been a lot of deaths and a lot of illness at Amazon warehouses because the work has been so great to sort of provision America during this period. I'm trying to just the facts sometimes. This is the USA Today cover today that I thought was quite striking. Brian Stelter wrote about it in his morning newsletter, and so I wanted to credit Brian where I'd first seen it as well. And some stories I just retweet, like Molly, the one, oh, this is a great, see that person in that right there with the helmet? She was airmailed by her parents for the cost of a 53-cent stamp. The Postal Service has since stopped the idea of taking live beings as shipments for packages. But in the early days, that happened. So that photograph illustrated a story about the Postal Service. So it's just, sometimes you learn a lot from the image as much as the story if it's done well. And this is a little photograph that was found in the attic in a crawl space, just because there was a plumbing repair needed, and it turned out to be the house was a century earlier was a house of death during the Spanish flu and the influenza in Cambridge. And the people who live there now, former CNN analyst and former Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Juliette Kayyem, had no idea about her house's history until she went on Twitter and said, wow, do you know this guy? And sort of search Twitter filled in the blanks for her.
That's amazing. Look at this lovely post from Kavita. She says, uplifting stories are multivitamins in our lives. I think that's beautiful. And Rose has put in a link to my old column. And Courtney says, finally getting back online to Sree Sreenivasan and amazing shows. And Rose is beautiful. She says, David is a master of writing content stories that may have run in small papers, major papers. He picks out the heart of the story and makes it into a story that you can't put down and gets more retweets than many reporters on their own stories. I'm always honored when Dave Beard retweets me. I think a lot of us feel that way, that when David retweets you, you really achieve something, because he knows how to pick out a story.
It means a lot from Rose, who's dedicated her life to be a really strong reporter and a hardworking reporter too.
Let's pick a couple of these other stories. Tell us what's happening here.
Right here is basically we've seen the last day Minneapolis and Central Park about people who get in trouble just for walking while black, driving while black, doing anything while black. And this is Ernest Owens, who says, I was trying to figure out why I'm less stressed these days, and it's because I'm having fewer interactions with the Karens of the world, and it makes me feel better about myself and my own skin. And it's a shame that it takes a pandemic to do that. But this is another quote from him, that little blue there too. And it's just the things that he doesn't miss.
I just wanted to say to everybody watching, this ability to pick out content beautiful content from other people's content, share it, give them credit, bring attention to it, is an amazing skill to have. It's kind of an annotation of the 21st century. And David has perfected this. You should all study his tweets. Go to Da Beard on Twitter and learn how he does it, because it is magical what he does. And I'm so excited to see how he's continued to grow that out. And he does that on Twitter. He does newsletters, all of this stuff he does so well. Kavita says, USA cover image made me think how vulnerable life is. Kavita says, one more day with David, please. Wow, that's, I hope you're embarrassed by that, David.
Well, I just try to figure out, will it be day 93? Will it be day 101? If you have a couple bad news days in a row, you can call a friend.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. And we want to thank your colleagues at the National Geographic, who are so open to your participating and seeing that there's value in shows like this as well. They get calls from all over the world to do media, so we appreciate that. Mark, watching from Durham, North Carolina, says, great job. Any favorite memories of North Carolina?
Oh, well, plenty of favorite memories from North Carolina, and we have a friend who had played an opening act for a North Carolina group called the Red Clay Ramblers, a bluegrass band, and he lives in the Research Triangle now, and love it. But North Carolina is full of great stories and great people, and politically, it's going to be one of the 5 or 6 most important states in the next 6 or 7 months. But it also is just such a diverse state, from the shore to the mountains, and it's I don't know. I just find it fascinating. I wish I could be like 2 or 3 people, and one of them would be reporting in North Carolina right now.
Yeah, that's great. Olinda says, truly enjoyed the show today. Roberta says, David, thank you for bringing back some soul to journalism. I hope we're embarrassing you here.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
We're getting the slap happy version of me now, so it's true. It's just not very well thought out.
Thank you, David. We have met through Sree Social Media Weekend and have recently shared stories about our father's World War II service. Yeah. Really important. Kavita, you too. Glad knowing David Beard. And Mark says he knows the Red Clay Ramblers, of course, and he says they're amazing, yeah, which is pretty cool. So before we let you go, it's already 10:13, way past our show time. This is just so much for us to talk about with David. So someone watching this doesn't have a lot of budget and wants to do social media properly. What are some things? You hinted at it in the newsletter conversation, but I don't have a big following. I don't have all of that. Is it still worth doing social? Is it still worth going out there and doing this work of doing quality content and sharing that? Is that still worth it in your opinion? Does it make sense? What do you say?
I think you give it a shot, and I think you before you talk, you listen, and maybe be very selective at either a subset of your Twitter friends or a Twitter list, and just examine what is it you like about these 20 people that they do, or the way that they think, or how is that enriching your life just by listening to those people. And then if those people aren't there and there's a story, you might say, well, geez, if, North Carolina, if William Barber were tweeting right now, he might note this point. Or if if different people, you're sort of a representative for these points of view that you treasure yourself, and you I think that you listen first to see what others are saying, and you can accept or reject what they say, and you can refine what you read, and maybe, to me, it's all about the links, or I was an editor, and I always thought journalism could be 20 times better than it is. What's the very best in each story, and why couldn't we make the rest of the story as great as those 2 or 3 paragraphs that are really distinguishing, that you would tell your best friend when you got home or met afterward after that story. That's what I wanted to share in my newsletters. And I thought journalism could be more vital and better if we got to the heart of the matter more.
Oh, that's so well put. What are some newsletters that you read every day?
Well, a really basic, easy one is put out by Aspen Institute, and it's just like the 5 best ideas of the day. I'm not sure they're the best ideas of the day, but there are 5 ideas that might make you think, and 1 or 2 of them might really make you think. Yesterday, I used one of those ideas that'll be in Sunday's family and kids newsletter for Nat Geo. So I'm always looking around for other material from newsletters too. But I also, Tom Jones, not the singer, but a person at Pointer, produces the Pointer news column that I used to write. And I think he's doing a very good job. So I would recommend sort of a daily, there are many media business kind of columns, Brian Stelter, of course. So those are a couple others. I subscribe to so many. I like City Lab. They have a newsletter that I think is very good at maybe the future of cities. So it depends what your interests are. If you're like a real investigative reporter, you might want to catch the ProPublica or the Center for Public Integrity's weekly newsletter as well. So there are it depends on what you want to do. And sometimes if you just I don't know, want to laugh, or you want to find out what the tone is from, there may be things about some particular personal topic, whether it's Indian music or classic rock or international film, that you might just want to get closer to the writer that puts together this newsletter, and you subscribe to it for that reason.
Sure, I think that's great. Kavita says you have a captivating laugh. I like that. And Mark is going to book you on his podcast if he can, and he's got your email address because you put it right on the screen on your Twitter feed. Have you ever regretted being so open, David, just generally?
Not. I mean, I can't. I mean, there was a time before the 2016 election where I thought like, are people not liking me because they're bots or because they're Russians? Or, I felt like maybe the platforms were dragging me down. Part of the reason for Recharge was the idea that maybe I could improve my social media feed if I just did it myself, and I found the best stories that were on social media, and I got sort of a reputation for uplifting stories or trying to help people out of the gutter that social media could sometimes be, and try to recapture what was the promise of social media earlier. So it might have been a reaction to just these massive bot attacks that I occasionally would get.
And that's certainly something that a lot of us have seen. So I really do need to let you go. Steve says City Labs newsletter is excellent. So he's endorsing that. And many people are saying you should come back and post. I'm seeing comments from all the platforms, which is great. And Twyla acknowledges your shout out for Rose Horowitz. And that's something that is so generous of you. You're always pointing to other people. You're always helping other people. And that's what's so fantastic about you. And I would also say to everybody watching that David shows that you can have had traditional journalism training and you can navigate the new world because he's always learning. Many of you have heard me say hashtag always be learning, and he's always learning, always curious. And that's great for all of us to learn and do in our world. So we'll give you a final thought for now, and we'll have you back whenever you're willing to come back, because clearly people want you back.
Well, my only thought was just to experiment. If you try something new, and if you don't like it, or follow somebody who might be different, Mona Elwahi, is based in Cairo. The people who I love on Twitter are nowhere like me, and don't look like me, don't have anything near my life experience, just more varied than anything you would see. And I'm richer because of the great variety of people who I follow on social. So give somebody a chance to be a regular voice in your life.
Thank you so much. We'll leave it at that. Our guest has been David Beard. I have some housekeeping and some things to share with the audience, including a great show that a friend of ours, Stefan, does. We're going to show them his.
You're on tomorrow.
Yeah, he's on tomorrow, so we're going to show them that. So everybody, please stick around. But let's say goodbye to David. Let's let him get back to his work. Poor man has 7 newsletters to produce a week. I struggle with 1 newsletter, and it's nowhere near as good or as impactful as his. So thank you very much, Dave, for being part of our lives. But thank you for being part of our lives, and thank you for being a digital friend to so many. Thanks very much, David. And you're wearing purple, which I love. So you're on brand. I appreciate that. Folks, that was David Beard, newsletters editor of the National Geographic Enterprise. I hope you will all follow him at @thebeard on Twitter. He is amazing, as you saw there, and just a good man on top of everything else. So I love interacting with him. As you can tell, we're friends for a long time. A reminder that we have a great new course that we're offering, a free course for anybody in the world who wants to upskill their social. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. First, I want to tell you about our friend Stefan Kaplan has his own show, the Spin It Social Hour, and you can see that he has a great guest tomorrow, Ronaldo Robinson, who is at RMR Pictures. Follow him. He's amazing. He took one of my portraits that was stunning, not because of me, but the way he took it. And Stefan's show is on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern, so make sure you catch that. And also, I want to remind everyone that you can hire my team to do things like what you're seeing right here, right now. You can go in and hire us to help you convert your in-person event into a virtual event, or have your own show like we're doing right now. We can be 10% of your production or 110% of your production, and talk to us before you cancel your in-person event. So please talk to us. My email is sree@sree.net. You can see it on the screen. Please contact me. We will talk to you. We will advise you on why you shouldn't perhaps cancel or postpone your in-person event. We're creating a conference. We're also doing a concert, but a conference on Saturday for 50,000 teachers. 50,000 teachers. It's the T4 conference. T4.education is the website. Check it out. T4.education. People from 77 countries and 50,000 teachers will be attending in English, Spanish, and Arabic. So please do check that out, T4.education. And we are very, very grateful to everyone who has shared and participated in everything we do. And a reminder about our course. It's called Muckrack Academy, Fundamentals of Social Media for Journalists, PR Pros, and everyone. A free certification course. Save your seat at mrac.co/social. mrac.co/social. This is the course that I've been working on for 15, 20 years and not even knowing it. The basics, fundamentals on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And you'll get all of them, and you will be at where I think everybody needs to be. 3,000 people have already signed up, and you can sign up now. The course starts in June. Just a couple of hours worth of work, but you will learn a lot. I promise you that. My awesome colleague Linda Bernstein is helping me put this together. mrac.co/social. mrac.co/social from Muckrack Academy. Please tell anybody in the world can participate. It's free. It is offered to anybody of any background, any experience level, any profession. You will benefit from fundamentals of social media, a free certification course, mrac.co/social. That's it for now, folks. Thank you for all your help, your support, your blessings as we weather the storm here. 77 days in New York City. This is our 77th show. It's hard to believe. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time, we have a special show talking on misinformation and disinformation. We'll have guests from Europe and Australia, 9 a.m. Eastern, so about 10 and a half hours from now, 11 and a half hours from now, something like that. But please join us as we cover the misinformation pandemic that's going on as well. And we'd love to have your feedback on any of this. We're looking for guests, we're looking for topics, and we're looking for sponsors. So please let us know, sree@sree.net. Our sponsorship rates are so inexpensive that we know you will enjoy putting an ad on with us and getting your word out into the world. You can see the rates are very inexpensive. Maybe you don't have anything to promote, but you have a favorite charity you'd like to do a shout out for, as so many people have done. That's a nice way for you to support your favorite charity as well. And we're learning how we do ads and things like that here. And if you haven't seen it, our latest promo card on this show, we've had 75 shows, 1 million plus viewers, 155 guests, 91 of them women. Deliberately, we want to get as many female speakers into our mix as possible, diversity in all kinds. We've had speakers from 10 countries and 38 cities, and we're just blessed by the amount of interest people have shown on the show. And a big shout out to scroll.in. They are one of India's biggest news, culture, and analysis websites, and they simulcast our show, and we're so grateful to the team there. That's it for now. Please email me, sree@sree.net. Get on my newsletter, sign up for the free course, and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And of course, subscribe on YouTube. Please, please, please.